what do we mean by no toxic additives? Additives are very common in commercial winemaking. Wine companies are allowed to use thickeners, dyes, flavoring, sterilizers, defoaming agents, and a whole lot more to create a certain type of product. In fact, the FDA approves 76 additives for use in winemaking in the United States. We here at Dry Farm Wines only work with natural growers who share a philosophy of pure wine made without these industrial additives. We vet every grower before working with them to make sure their ethos aligns with ours, to make wine as pure as possible as nature intends.
Good afternoon. Happy Saturday. You're listening to the Ask Dr. Ernst show. I'm your co-host, Dr. Aaron Ernst, along with rockstar co-host, Dr. Chris Demczar.
Yeah, great to be back again.
Thanks for joining us today. And wow, what a huge amount of energy this morning, right, with the thyroid webinar.
That's right.
Just an immense amount of healing, transformation, people getting set free from the, I'll call it, throes of being in thyroid disease.
Yep.
You know, we had a lot of people sharing testimonials of like, you know, I've been on thyroid medication for 20 years. I've been doing your program for, 3, 4, 5 months and reducing medications, decreasing inflammation, just a radical amount of movement.
Exactly. And you know what's really interesting is I was going back through and looking through a lot of some of the advertisements and some of the other ways that people connect with us. And, they can leave comments and they can have their own community chat logs open. And it's really interesting to see the action steps that people are taking. They're really diving into the specific lab values for their thyroid and really asking really specific health questions for themselves. So people are thinking, people are taking action steps. You guys are starting to heal. You're doing it all on your own, which is incredible.
And that's why we say that this show is, where pounds are shed as a side effect, where disease is dead, and where you can become set free from your health conditions. So, hey, if you missed the opportunity to check out that thyroid event, I would say, why don't we do a special offer and give away the replay? So the event is already finished, but if you do this right now and you text the word thyroid with your name and email, we'll give you free access to the replay. You can get the ebook, you can grab the information. This would be someone who's either been taking a thyroid medication or who struggles with brain fog, forgetfulness, fatigue, joint pain, etc., because it's all interconnected.
It is.
And so that opportunity is right now. Text the word thyroid with your name and email to 704-906-2094. And we have such a heavy topic for today. We're going to be talking about diabetes, specifically the most common, which is type 2, and really, where does this thing come from? What does medicine say causes it versus what is a functional approach?
Right.
And it's such an epidemic today. We're looking at roughly 10% of Americans are currently diagnosed. So that's almost 35 million people in the United States. And there's approximately another 25% that are falling in this zone of pre-diabetes, which I find fascinating because it's kind of like, I think you and I have had this conversation before. Can a female be pre-pregnant?
Well, no.
Yeah, so you're either pregnant or you're not, right? So to be pre-diabetic is just sort of the medical route saying, well, we see the diabetes, but it's not bad enough to medicate this.
Right, to manage it
we'll,
yet.
Yeah, we'll put you in this subcategory of watch and wait. And this is the biggest challenge behind most chronically induced lifestyle conditions, right?
Exactly.
You're not in the diagnostic zone by the labs yet. You're not in the prescriptive zone. So we'll just put you in this pre-category, and we'll 6 months, a year later, test and see, hey, have you now become diagnostic?
Exactly. And it's interesting you say the words watch and wait, because how many diseases end up manifesting after some watch and wait period? And so that's classified medically, right? It's come out in the last 10 years or so, guys, where it's being classified as metabolic disease. So specific to diabetes, and there's other diseases that we can classify underneath the umbrella of metabolic disease.
Yeah.
But a lot of this watch and wait period where you're being told, yeah, you're pre-diabetic, or you're heading towards diabetes, you're heading towards having blood sugar issues, or whatever you're being told, is really this: you now have metabolic disease. Your body is not regulating metabolism, which means your energy and your body's ability to make energy and utilize it and store it and whatever else needs to happen so that all your systems can go. Your body can't do that well anymore. And so this whole watch and wait to then be reactive, well, hey, you have a disease right now that needs to be addressed.
And here's the challenge, so diabetes is one of those things that, according to conventional factors, has so many underlying root causes, so they say, right? So like, let's just read a couple of these, right? So like, if you have a poor diet, you're more likely to have type 2 diabetes. If you're overweight, you're more likely to have type 2 diabetes. If you have high levels of inflammation, more likely to have it. If you're sedentary, more likely to have it. If you're stressed out, more likely to have it. If you've got a family history, so they say, this kind of like familial pass down of patterns.
Genetic.
If you have high blood pressure, if you have a hormonal condition like thyroid, we talked about that today, how thyroid isn't just a thyroid problem, it's a whole body system problem.
Right.
Being exposed to toxins and chemicals and even certain medications that can disrupt the insulin pathways. So the challenge is, a lot of times when someone's diagnosed as a type 2 diabetic, they're told it's their genes, they're told it's their diet or their lack of exercise, when you guys need to realize diabetes is not necessarily the condition. It's the effect. So the cause is what's creating this reaction. And we know that with type 2 diabetes, an interesting thing happens. So think of it like this. We know insulin is supposed to push sugar down, correct?
Yes.
And so you would assume a type 2 diabetic would have either high or low insulin then. If their sugar's high, you would think they would have
low
insulin, right? But what we find that's very interesting is most type 2 diabetics have very high sugars, and they also have very high insulin. So it kind of breaks the thought process. If insulin is supposed to move sugar into the cell to be burned for energy, and you have lots of insulin, then therefore you should have either low to normal sugars.
Exactly.
And what we're now learning is it's a resistance. So the receptor itself is either blocked. This is where the toxicities come in. It's either interfered with in that it's becoming attacked. So you can have an autoimmunity where antibodies go after the receptor. Or there's physical just lack of communication between how the brain talks to the tissue.
Right.
So the cell itself doesn't make enough receptors to be sensitive to insulin. And therefore, we start to see a rise in blood sugar.
Yep. And then to add to that, too, you could also throw in inflammation there, right? And then inflammation can influence the communication in the nerve plexus or the nerve pathways. Inflammation can also lead to that immune response that you were talking about. But inflammation ends up being a huge modulator or driver of creating and manifesting this condition within a lot of people that are told they have diabetes.
Yeah, and so here's the thing, like, where does all this inflammation come from? Well, classically, it was sort of thought to be a dietary thing, right? So like we used to say dietary fats are the reason why everybody's getting sick. Heart disease, diabetes, thyroid issues, etc. And this whole kind of like fat-causing disease thing has been disproven 1,000 times over.
Right.
What we know, of course, is yes, it's the kind of carbohydrates you consume. So if you're a type 2 diabetic, the challenge is a lot of traditional American Diabetic Association, your classic, physician, they're going to put you on a traditional diabetic diet. It's typically high in grains, high in dairy, high in fruits, very low in protein, and extremely low in healthy fats.
Right.
And so the challenge becomes you teach these people to eat in a way that actually somewhat promotes their condition, and they follow their advice with their doctors. They're taking their medications, they're eating their diet, and maybe their numbers are looking decent, but most people don't ever break out. They don't get set free.
Exactly. Yep.
So I think, the challenge is the diet that we would call like standard American or Western diet, right? It's full of refined carbohydrates. See, the thing is fructose is a very dangerous sugar, even for a healthy individual or a diabetic. And of course, now here comes the challenge. Where does fructose come from?
Lots of fruits.
So it's this sort of a misconstrued thought, right? We think fruits and vegetables are healthy and therefore they're going to help you to heal. Well, if you're in a healthy state, that can be true.
Right.
But when you're a diabetic and you have an extremely hard time processing sugar in the first place, the challenge with fructose is it's only metabolized in the liver. And most of the time, because a diabetic type 2 is not metabolizing sugar, glucose in the first place, fructose gets put on the back burner. Therefore, it turns into fat, and this is what leads to an inflammatory process in the liver. We start to see elevations in body weight. We start to see even signs of, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, where liver enzymes start shifting, triglycerides start going up, cholesterol starts going up. And this is why we have to now label diabetes not as the cause of the condition, but as being the effect of what I guess we could term is sort of metabolic syndrome.
Exactly. Yep, definitely a bigger part of this whole picture is the metabolic syndrome. And one of the things that's interesting too, fructose is a different sugar, especially than what we would find in grains and whatnot, but it's a precursor to what your liver, what your body's going to do to try to process the grains as well. And the more, the more that this disease progresses, right? So the further you are down the diabetes trail, the worse off you are at being able to regulate your blood sugar, the harder it is for your liver to process grains and to process most other carbohydrates you can imagine, and what your body has to do to just try to turn it to fat and store it and utilize it in some way that's not going to be overly harmful in that present moment. And just knowing that you're building this harm, adding to this harm, that long term is going to have massive lifelong health consequences.
So if you're listening and you're going like, all right, so I get it. Like, obviously I've been approaching this incorrectly. I'm not getting to the root cause. I'm taking a medication. I'm trying to follow a good diet, but I'm not getting good results. We have two things for you. We have a Diabetes Heal Thyself ebook, which breaks down the 3 underlying root causes that we're going to be discussing not only today, but over the next series. It has several recommendations on what kind of testing you need to get. But more importantly, we're hosting another live masterclass. I mean, I love our masterclasses.
Yeah.
Hundreds of people online getting set free and being sort of released to become a self-healing doctor. The one on diabetes, our masterclass, is on Saturday, April 8th. I know that's like 4 weeks away from today, but I promise you, this thing is going to fill up so fast. And the effects of you becoming your own doctor, you can see your blood sugars drop sometimes in a matter of a couple days, weeks. Usually A1C takes, several months to come down, but the average patient that we work with is watching their A1C drop by not just 1 or 2 points, but sometimes even going from diagnostic diabetes type 2 to pre-diabetes in like 30 or 90 days.
Exactly.
To then non-diabetic in 90 days. And so we're going to reveal all of the secrets and the techniques and have discounts and ways you can get testing and even seek therapy if you're somebody who's going like, I need help.
Right.
Again, that's Saturday, March 8th. It's at April 8th. It's at 10 a.m. in the morning. And all you need to do is text the word diabetes with your name and email to 704-906-2094. The ebook is yours for free, which will open up your mind and expand your horizons. The event is going to really lay everything out for you and show you here's what creates your condition and here's the tests you should get, and then here's the techniques on how to clear that.
And here's a really cool thing, Dr. Ernst, because we work with a lot of patients that we would say they define them as having some level of metabolic syndrome. And so within that, right, is diabetes or pre-diabetes. And so you were talking about, it's really cool to see lab values come back and blood sugars are regulating themselves better, that their body's doing a better job lowering their A1C, and maybe their body's doing a really good job of now having the appropriate amount of insulin. But what really turns patients and makes them smile and makes them happy, we can see it. The inflammation starts to go down.
Yes.
When the nerve plexuses open up and the nerve pathways open up and you can see the energy start to flow through someone's body. And next thing you know, the person's being able to do things in life that they weren't able to do before, or you're saying, you know what, I had X, Y, and Z going on, and now I can't remember the last time that happened. And it's all because of the specific root cause therapy that was performed, that was done, whatever that needs to be. And so it's not just about being able to make your lab values look good. You can go do that medically and not solve the problem. It's about getting to the root cause to really figure out exactly what's going on, and you can't even imagine how your life can change because of that.
And guess what another major side effect is? We tend to lose weight. We get our energy back. Like you've said, I mean, you and I see this day in and day out, but it's almost like the initial person we work with has this sort of like fog or a haze over them. And it's like as soon as their body starts to heal and transform, it's like this layer, like a shell, just sloughed off.
That's
and
right.
We see this
It's a good
like
word.
clarity to their eyes and sort of a brightness to their skin. And it's almost complicated to say, but I think it's the look of health.
Yes, exactly.
Whereas, unfortunately, a lot of times, because of taking medications and eating high inflammatory foods, we have this look of sort of like illness. We have a look of disease that's become so normal, most people don't know what to think of when they see that change take place.
Right.
So just listen to this real quick, okay? So insulin resistance, which we know is the underlying sort of challenge, right? So the insulin hormones being produced, it's not landing on the receptor properly. Did you know that this has been linked to not just having issues with blood sugar? Because, most people think like, I only have diabetes. But
right.
like,
one thing.
Watch this, okay? Insulin resistance can change your cholesterol relationship such that it drives the good cholesterol down and drives the bad cholesterol up, thus shifting cholesterol relationships. It increases your risks for blood clots when you have insulin resistance. Atherosclerosis, so this is the plaquing of your arteries and sort of like the hardening of the vessels. Polycystic ovarian disease for females. Sleep apnea, which you're going to see is also a big issue with the reason why so many people struggle with regulating their sugars in the first place. Inflammation and sort of fattiness to the liver, elevation in triglycerides, elevated blood pressure, blood sugars, of course, go up. We start to see an increase in intra-abdominal fat. That's the visceral fat that's underneath the skin, sort of in our organs. And what's interesting is it can also affect your heart. So like, I'm hoping that those of you who are listening going like, oh, I just have diabetes, I take my medications, I control it. This isn't just a one thing condition. It's not just like insulin's effect is affecting your sugars. It's affecting your heart. It's affecting your liver. It's affecting your cholesterol. It's affecting your metabolism. It affects, basically all avenues of your life.
Right. And then you can see how it starts to interplay even with other hormones. I mean, I don't know if you mentioned it or not, but there's several hormones. Thyroid, you already mentioned. The ability of cortisol to help regulate insulin. That happens a lot when you're sleeping. It's called the dawn effect. And the ability to regulate cortisol and your insulin appropriately so that your blood sugar doesn't spike or crash while you sleep. How many of you know that that's either happening appropriately or not appropriately while you sleep at night? For someone that is diabetic or pre-diabetic, that ends up being a huge problem. And so one of the reasons that metabolic disease and diabetes can continue to just progress over time is because while you're sleeping, you're not able to regulate appropriately. And before you know it, your blood sugar crashes inside of your body, and your body has to try to make up for that. And that ends up being a huge problem the next day when you wake up and now you're tired and fatigued. And like you said before, there's this fog of lack of health that's just overcomes this person, overcomes you maybe. And so being able to basically reverse that is why we need to dive into the root issue of insulin, or the insulin resistance, and solve it from that root.
Yes, and typically when you do that, guess what happens to your sleep? It gets better. Guess what happens to your cortisol? It starts to lower down.
Yes.
Your inflammatory processes shift. You start to heal, and your body becomes set free.
That's right.
So here's the number one thing I want to discuss. Yes, we know that there's neurological involvement, there's toxological involvement, there can even be, gut involvement, leaky gut. But the biggest issue for a lot of diabetics today is they still don't understand they have to control their carbohydrate intake, because many of them just think like, well, I can eat whatever I want because I'm taking my medications.
Right.
But it's well established that a high starch, low fiber diet is going to not only predispose you for type 2 diabetes, but prevents you from sort of breaking free from it. Because again, if I'm eating lots of carbohydrates that are of lower quality, and my insulin receptors don't work, the sugar's going to hang around, and then that's typically turned into fat. And the challenge is a lot of the associations are recommending moderately high carbohydrate loads, like the Canadian Diabetes Association, even the American Diabetes Association. So listen to this: 45 to 60% of calories consumed per day should come from carbohydrates. And I'm telling you for a fact, if you were to consume 50 to 60% of your food intake as carbs, and you have type 2 diabetes, I mean, good luck in getting that fixed. It'd be like trying to get out of debt, but constantly spending on the credit card.
Yeah.
So, you put $200 into it, but you spend $400. You put $200 and you spend $400. You're never going to break free from this pattern. So we have to make sure that, number one, you're definitely looking at the types of carbohydrates that you're consuming. And the unique thing is that when people follow what we would call sort of like a healthier version of a lower carb, moderate protein, high fat diet, there's even studies showing that this helps to reduce A1C, triglycerides, cholesterol, improves insulin sensitivity. So I think it's just the nature of, we have to recognize you can't just say, well, I'm going to eat a healthy diet, take my medications, and manage my diabetes if you want to reverse it.
Yeah, love that. I love the whole debt analogy too. And you have to think about it. If you really want to reverse your diabetes, reverse the disease, you've got to find a way to pay off your debt.
Yeah.
And the way that you pay off your debt isn't by adding in more carbs to your diet. And it's not about adding in more processed foods and other things I know we're going to get into and talk about. So it's really about, you've got to make the decision to pay off your debt. And that takes work and that takes commitment. It takes consistency. And doing that over time will allow you to pay off the debt, to reverse the diabetes and heal yourself.
Yep. So let's talk about this concept known as, how do we determine what kind of foods we can eat? And honestly, it just requires you to start testing your blood sugar a little bit more frequently. So many of us often will say, well, I don't have diabetes, I haven't been diagnosed, so why should I do this? Really important right now to know, how does your body react to the kind of carbohydrates you consume, to see if you're setting yourself up for this in the long run. And if you are a type 2 diabetic, you should have a monitor, you should have the ability to do this. And trust me, this little exercise can be eye-opening.
Yes.
So it starts by doing this. In the morning when you wake up, check your blood sugars. And it should be after a period of fasting, 8 hours while sleeping, probably plus another 2 or 3 or 4 after you've had your dinner. So between 10 to 12 hours of fasting, check your blood sugars in the morning, note what they are. And I'm going to challenge you to do something where you don't eat breakfast. You would drink water, have coffee, tea, something sort of like the fatted coffees and teas. And then you want to test your blood sugar again just before lunch for 2 reasons. Number one, we want to see if by you not eating any food, can you naturally allow your blood sugars to come down? And we get a good trend of, okay, what level are you at when you wake up? And if you add X number of hours of fasting, what level can you kind of accomplish on your own without eating food?
Right.
And then the next step is to have your lunch. And then we want to start checking your sugars at the 1 hour, 2 hour, and 3 hour mark. And here's the reason for this. If you're eating classic food patterns that are high in, refined carbohydrates or even carbs that aren't healthy for you, what you're going to see is a rather large spike in your blood sugars within that first hour. And it can take sometimes 2 or 3 hours to recover. So for example, let's say I eat my lunch and my sugars go well north of 140 within the first hour. That's an indication that that meal I just ate is not a carbohydrate healthy meal for myself. There's way too much, I'll call it like simple carbohydrates that are spiking blood sugars. And if it requires, 2 hours or 3 hours for it to come back to a baseline, again, you're seeing that the food you're eating is too expressive. It's too difficult for your body to process. Now, let's say you redesign your menu and you eat a different lunch pattern, something more of like a ketotic style or like a high fat, moderate protein, low carb meal, and we see that your sugars recovered themselves back to normal within the 2 to 3 hour mark. It's a way for us to say, okay, this is the type of food I can eat, and I'm not going to constantly keep spiking my sugars.
Yep. And that's really just step one, right? Is to start to figure that out and to then have the power and the authority to do that after every meal. So that way you're not just checking maybe after lunch, but you're doing it after dinner, you're doing it after you have a snack, because so many times people decide, I had that healthy lunch, right? Now I'm getting hungry 3-4 hours later. Let me have that meal. Let me have that snack again. And that's a very easy way to spike your blood sugar again without even realizing it. And the other thing too is to then try to eliminate how many times you are eating. So you have to check less, but if you're really trying to heal from diabetes, you don't want to keep spiking your blood sugar over and over and over again and forcing your body to work. That's taxing on your liver. That's taxing on your cortisol response. That's helping to regulate the amount of insulin that you're producing, which means it's taxing on your pancreas to be able to produce the hormones to regulate your blood sugar. So the less tax you have to put on your body, the easier it's going to be to keep paying off your debt. I don't know why I love using that analogy so much.
No, it makes perfect sense because, we've been sort of abusing our system and we've been elevating insulin for too long a period of time, the receptors become, they lose their sensitivity to it. So it takes more and more and more insulin to get the effect. And I think if we can start teaching people that you need to pay attention to your numbers, I think you should be waking up at least once or twice a week, checking your blood sugar in the morning just to confirm, okay, where am I? And let's talk about those numbers need to look like. In a healthy level, you want them to be well under 100, so like mid 80s to 90s. So if you're waking up in the morning and you're seeing 105, 110, 115, there's the cautionary sort of who you really need to pay attention to this. If we're seeing 120, 130, 140 or north, that gives us an indication again, you're in a state of insulin resistance. The sugar response isn't working. It could be that you're going too high on carbohydrates, or it could be you've got the 3 functional underlying root causes. There's a lack of nerve supply to the cell, so it's not responding to the sugar signal. There's an inflammatory process leading to an autoimmunity, typically from the gut.
Right.
So you're attacking the receptors, so the insulin receptors basically fall away. Or there's a toxicity associated with the fact that the receptor itself is blunted.
Yes.
So it's there working, but it's full, and the insulin can't get inside of it. So I think, when we come back from this commercial break, we're going to be talking about one of the strongest, most powerful diets that have been sort of, I'll call it in research, shown to even help you to break out of type 2 diabetes. We're going to go through some of the foods of focus, like the things we want to actually start eating that have been shown to significantly reduce A1C, blood sugar, and increase your insulin sensitivity. And we've got this sort of like powerhouse pack of certain vitamins and nutrients you can use, some of which actually work just as good or better than the medications people take.
Yeah.
And so we're going to reveal that to you when we come back from this next commercial break. But I would say let's take a moment right now. All right, this is your opportunity. Let's grab the free Diabetes Heal Thyself ebook. It's chock full of everything we're talking about today, plus some more in-depth details on the testing that you need to get to find out what is your underlying root cause. And again, we have free access to the Saturday, April 8th event, which is at 10 a.m. in the morning. It's our Diabetes Masterclass. You can register for free right now by texting your name, your email, and the word diabetes to 704-906-2094. Once again, that's your name, your email, the word diabetes to 704-906-2094.
Yeah, and what's exciting is this is going to be your chance, your opportunity where don't wait for the masterclass. You get to start taking action steps now. Start to change some of the things that you're eating. Go and get a blood sugar monitor so you can start testing that. Yeah. Figure out how your body responds 2, 3, 4 hours after a meal. Do you know that you can even get back to a resting baseline blood sugar measurement? Or are you even though your blood sugar and your A1C look good on your medical lab work, are you noticing that your blood sugar is rising above that 140 number after you eat, or 2 to 3 hours later cannot get back to baseline? You want to know those things so that way you can start taking action steps now.
Yep. And the reference guides for you. So what should the numbers be are in here. How do we do that? Food challenge test is in here. Everything you need to start taking control of your diabetes right now. 704-906-2094. Text your name, the word diabetes in your email, and we'll take care of the rest. We'll see you guys in just a moment.
See you guys.
What if we told you coffee was good for you?
Coffee is the single highest source of antioxidants in the Western diet. More antioxidants than kale, more antioxidants than 70% dark chocolate, and more antioxidants than blueberries.
In fact, what if we told you that coffee is really good for you?
Research shows that 3 to 5 cups of coffee per day dramatically enhances performance in high-intensity exercise, improves memory, reaction times, and overall cognitive function, decreases risk of depression, promotes weight loss by boosting metabolic rates, reduces risk of type 2 diabetes up to 40%, decreases risk of liver cancer up to 71%, reduces risk of Parkinson's up to 30%, and decreases risk of Alzheimer's up to 65%. Overall, coffee drinkers live longer. People who drink 3 to 5 cups of coffee per day have about a 15% lower risk of premature mortality compared to people who don't drink coffee.
And what if we told you that the health benefits of coffee could actually be increased through conscious roasting, sourcing, and processing? Introducing Purity, a health-conscious coffee company. At Purity, we've brought together a world-class team to analyze every step in the production chain from cherry to cup. we make decisions with only one thing in mind. How can we make the healthiest coffee in the world? Here's our 3-step process. Step 1, we search the world for the highest quality organic green beans that meet our exacting standards. Way less than 1% of coffee worldwide fit our sourcing criteria. Step 2, we test, and test again to create a specific roasting protocol for each harvest that maximizes healthy compounds and minimizes toxins. Step 3, we nitrogen pack our coffee within 48 hours of roasting and deliver to your door every 2 weeks to ensure maximum freshness. The result is the ultimate coffee drinking experience. You'll not only taste the difference in our clean, healthy coffee, with Purity, you'll feel the difference.
Our coffee club members report a bright, alert lift with less jitters than regular coffee and much more gentle on the stomach.
Sign up for Purity today, and you'll never have to worry about your source for healthy coffee again.
To bring you the best natural wine the world has to offer, we've designed a fully curated membership program. Every selection you receive is different and unique. Every wine is picked by our wine team, lab tested for purity, and curated into a special box for your enjoyment. So how does the membership work? We offer 2 main options: a half case of 6 bottles or a full case of 12. You can request all reds, all whites, or a perfect split of both. Then you can set the frequency, monthly or every other month. We offer a similar simple membership for rosé and sparkling wines. After you choose these basic options, we'll do the rest. With every box we send you, we aim to present the greatest diversity of flavors, textures, and profiles. There is a healthy mix of the classics, but also rare varietals. We do this because natural wines taste different from their commercial counterparts. We want to share the best possible experience with you, so you can discover new wines you love. And you can always reorder a wine that took your heart, or ask us to avoid certain profiles. The best part is, you don't need any wine knowledge to fully enjoy these boxes. We curate our selections to be enjoyed without worry. Ultimately, this is Dry Farm Wines. We are so grateful to be able to share the power of natural wines with you.
Good afternoon. Welcome back. You're listening to the Ask Dr. Ernst Show. Hey, happy Saturday to you. It is the show where pounds are shed, disease is dead, and where you can be set free from your health problems. I'm your host, Dr. Ernst, along with co-host Dr. Chris Demczar.
Yeah, great
Thank
to
you
be
for being here today.
Yeah, we're having a great conversation.
And, we spent a good amount of time at the top of the hour discussing that we're talking about type 2 diabetes and how the conventional, traditional approach is very much watch and wait.
Yeah.
When you have it, medicate and give some pretty generalistic dietary advice that tends to actually not get rid of the condition, but actually just help you to manage it.
Right.
And what we're going to do in this segment is now go a little deeper into the science-backed diets that work very well for type 2 diabetes to lower, your blood sugar, your fasting levels, also your A1C, and increase insulin sensitivity. We have sort of this list of powerhouse foods that if you were to focus on eating these, you should be seeing your blood sugars drop rather drastically. And a list of the key supplements that help to increase insulin sensitivity.
Yeah, and you stole my word right there. I was going to say drastic, right? So if you're listening to this, and especially if you're managing either being pre-diabetic, if you're full-blown diabetes, or if you're told you've got metabolic syndrome and you're taking some sort of medication, you're on some sort of medicalized diet, you're doing something, and you're listening to us and you're going, wow, that seems extreme. That's quite a drastic change from what I'm doing. Good. If you really want to heal, you have to expect that it's going to be something drastic. It's going to be something that seems difficult, that is hard, and you don't need to try to do it. You need to plan and actually do it. So be open to taking the drastic steps so that you can drastically heal yourself. It's not a secret. It's never been a secret, but it does take work, time, and effort to make the change and drive the change that you want to see with your health.
And I like the nature of being open, right? So like, be open to learning something new. I mean, we're giving away a free ebook called Diabetes Heal Thyself, which will break down the 3 main root causes. What are the underlying effects? What kind of tests should you actually get done? Not just your standard medical test, to find the root causes. And we have all kinds of advice and even tips of things you can do right now to start changing your blood sugars and overcome this condition called type 2 diabetes. You can grab this ebook for free by texting your name, the word diabetes, and your email to 704-906-2094. We're also offering admission to our free masterclass. It's on Saturday, April 8th. It's on Conquering Type 2 Diabetes the Functional Way. It's at 10 a.m. in the morning. So, carve out the date and time to dedicate to learning. Download and grab the ebook from us so you can start piecing together, okay, so this is a root cause, that's a root cause. Let me try these challenge tests and see how my body responds. And if you're not happy with the results, Masterclass will give you answers as to how you can finally solve this thing called type 2 diabetes.
Yep, exactly.
Now,
I just want to say, so you shouldn't plan to show up to the masterclass to be, let me learn more about what that challenge test is, and maybe then I'll start it. No, show up knowing what your numbers are so that you can interact with us. You can let us know what happened to you, and then you can really dive into, what are the root issues that's going on with how your body's responding to the challenges that you're already doing. And so that way you can really it's going to snowball the healing, right? You want to make that healing process bigger and bigger. You don't want to let it get to the point where you are saying, yep, that's too drastic of a change for me. Be open to making that change right now.
And let's look at it this way. One of the greatest changes you can do is challenge your body. So I think you would probably agree with me on this. One way to find out right now if your diet is causing, to a degree, your type 2 diabetes would be take a day, fast fully. So make sure you drink water, have coffees and teas, but no food. So no proteins, no fats, no carbohydrates.
Yep.
What you're doing is you're basically saying, okay, hey body, I'm not going to put anything in you for 24 hours. And I'm going to track my sugars and see what they do.
Yeah.
And you would be amazed how many diabetics we've worked with do this sort of 24-hour sugar challenge test and come back and go, man, I've never seen numbers this low. It's been years since I've seen even a double-digit number. What does this mean? And it's always for us, we're like, it means your diet needs a drastic overhaul.
Right.
Now, sometimes people do this test and it doesn't drop down. So see, again, the importance is, hey, maybe it's not diet, but it's now the effects of what we're talking about. It's the neurological involvement. Yep. It's the toxicological involvement. It's the leaky gut. It's the insulin sensitivities. So there's a way even right now, when you finish this show, if you have a test, just start, right? So get your baseline number, begin a fast for the remainder of the day, and see where your sugars go, because what you'll probably find out is they're going to go lower than you expect.
Exactly. Yep.
So let's talk about this peer-reviewed, published case study sort of diet that has been shown to drastically improve the effects with people with type 2 diabetes. And it's this thing called the ketogenic diet.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of times people think a keto diet is something we do just simply to lose weight, right? So I'm going keto.
Or it's something that all the CrossFitters are doing, or you're only doing it if you're an elite athlete. So there's different stigmas out there about the keto diet.
And the unique thing is the studies indicate that a ketogenic diet can significantly have benefits towards a type 2 diabetic. They found that if you follow this diet properly, it can improve your hemoglobin A1C, it can promote weight loss, it can even reverse, kidney stress and damage, which is a big deal for a lot of type 2 diabetics. It can improve your blood lipids, cardiovascular health. So it isn't just for type 2 diabetics, but it has a massive effect on being able to make a change to your insulin sensitivity. And let me ask you a question. I'm kind of putting you on the spot. What do you think is so powerful behind the ketogenic diet that makes it work?
So there's one big thing, and it's not what you're putting in your body, it's what you're not putting in, right? Because you're basically eliminating a lot of the carbohydrates. You're eliminating a lot of the refined sugars, a lot of the processed sugars. You're eliminating your body's ability or the stress that's going to be placed on your body to say, we've got to break down these starch or these carbs into sugars and utilize them when that's already not happening effectively. So the ability to not put that into your body is what makes the keto diet and being in ketosis so powerful. Again, because when you break it down, your body is a metabolic energy production system.
Yeah.
And we all know you're going to use sugars to make energy. Everybody gets that. But what you've got to understand is with the ketogenic diet, it's not just called keto because it sounds cute or it sounds like it's a fun word or it sounds fancy. You're literally going to produce ketones that your body can utilize for energy in place of the sugars that you're using beforehand. And that is not going to cause a blood sugar spike or a massive insulin resistance response because it's a totally separate mechanism from utilizing sugars for energy. So you want to use those ketones.
If anything, it almost creates a vacuum. So think of it like this. So the mitochondria inside of our cells produce energy. And if sugar's not going into the cell is sort of starving for energy. So you can have the cells of your body produce ketones by fasting and eating the keto diet, which is basically any foods that naturally help to support ketone production. Well, now watch. The mitochondria start using those ketone bodies for energy, and the cells start ramping up, and it creates a state of anti-inflammation. It's very antioxidizing, so it actually cleans the cell tissues out. And what some of the studies have shown is that it actually increases the sensitivity of the insulin receptors. So now watch what happens. You got all this insulin floating around, being a type 2 diabetic, and the receptors start to open, insulin lands, sugar starts to drop, you start to metabolize your carbohydrates properly, and we see a drastic shift in people's weight. They lose weight. We see their sugar start to drop. We see their blood values start to improve simply because we're sort of, for a temporary period, making the body use an alternative source for fuel rather than using sugar.
Yep, exactly. And now before we dive into this too, I know Dr. Ernst, you mentioned doing a one-day fast, and obviously we're talking about switching around your diet drastically, making a drastic change with your diet. Depending on what medications you may be taking, you might want to reach out to your medical doctor before you decide to do any of this, just as a precaution, because there are newer medications on the market today that can have a drastic effect, right? So they can mask what's happening with your blood sugar, they can mask what's happening with your insulin, and you have to be very careful. And so talk to your medical doctor if you're on any super specific diabetic medications, because of what their mechanisms are doing, right? Some influence the kidneys, some influence the pancreas, some influence the intestines. So depending on what you're taking, you just want to know if it's going to be safe for you to make this quick of a drastic change so you can really start testing yourself.
And that's why it's also important sometimes to get coaching because, sadly, a lot of physicians might shy you away from doing fasting or doing a keto diet. So, there are these, physicians that are more integrative and holistic, just like you and I. We work out of the Carolina area. So if you're looking for help and you need some guidance in how to do this, reach out to us. I mean, you can download the ebook and start getting connected with our resources and our techniques. You can come to the masterclass that's on Saturday, April 8th. So, really it's about becoming an engaged, I'll call it educated listener, learn the things you need to do, have someone coach you and guide you through it, and watch as your body starts to heal by itself.
Yeah, exactly. Love that.
Yeah, but we always have to say the disclaimer, to be careful, okay? If you're taking a medication and you fast, you can actually drop it way too quick. So I'm going to say, just as a precaution, don't let your blood sugars go under 60. If it gets to a point where you're 60 or less, that's time to start eating. We got to get you back up into a healthier range. But most people can handle doing an intermittent fast and a keto diet.
Right.
Yeah. So the thing with the keto diet is we have to remove all main sources of, processed and refined carbohydrates, which typically brings us to step number 1 in how do you master a keto diet? You have to get rid of gluten.
Yeah.
And it's partly because there are so many studies showing that gluten has a negative effect towards anyone with type 2 diabetes. And furthermore, even in animal studies, when they've taken rats and mice that have type 2 diabetes, and they've given them a gluten-free diet, they've seen an increase in function of production of insulin. They've seen an increase in the sensitivity of the insulin receptor, and they've seen an overall improvement in total glucose usage, which implies that, again, the metabolism is starting to now more effectively process carbohydrates.
Right. Yeah, gluten does a really good job of creating an inflammatory response in your body. And so that inflammatory response goes straight to your pancreas and attacks the beta cells. And the beta cells are what's responsible for producing the insulin. So you have to think every single time that you eat something that has gluten in it, you're essentially just shutting down the insulin production factory inside of your body, or you're stimulating it to not be able to work anymore. And that can become a big problem over time. Your body can only handle that for not at all really, but for a very short period of time before obviously there's going to start to become a massive issue at the pancreas level.
Yeah, and we also know that gluten can damage the intestinal lining. It leads to a condition known as increased intestinal permeability, dysbiosis, and or gut leaks. And the challenge with that is when your gut is physically leaking because of gluten-induced damage, now we start to build antibodies, and they're now actually showing that there's a high likelihood that the reason the insulin receptors aren't working is because they're physically being attacked as if they're foreign, like an autoimmune version of type 2 diabetes, which is now becoming sort of forefront in the research of 2022, 2020, 2019, etc.
Right.
So going gluten-free is just the beginning. Like, it really needs to be going grainless, because while there's wheat gluten, there are also other types of glutens that are found that are like what are called the gluten mimickers.
Yep.
So corn has a version of a gluten, and rice has a version of a gluten, and so do oats. So generally speaking, if you want to really hit the nail on the head for a healthy version of a keto diet, you have to go ketotic, which we'll talk about in a second, and also grainless.
Exactly.
To reduce the carbohydrate load and reduce what gluten can do. Now, the second thing with the keto diet is we have to make sure that most people are not eating enough protein. Would you agree to this?
Yeah, absolutely.
And what's the challenge behind not eating enough protein?
Well, the second you don't eat an adequate amount of protein, and we can define what that is, right? Because you need way less protein to give your body the energy that it needs than you will other food types like the gluten and the carbohydrates. And so when you don't have enough protein, that doesn't allow your body to feel full. And when you don't feel full, what are you more likely to do?
Yeah.
Go and find something that's quick and easy to give you that feeling of satiety, that feeling of fullness. Most likely is going to be something that has gluten or carbohydrate, or something that you don't need to be eating, especially if you're diabetic. So the first thing that eating more protein does is allows your body to say, okay, I'm good, we're full, let's move on, I can make the energy that I need. And on top of that too, so sometimes there's a myth that if you have diabetes and then you try to eat higher levels of protein, it's going to lead to a lot of kidney damage, and that's been disproven. That's not true at all. Unless you have some pre-existing kidney damage problem, whatever that may be, your kidneys are not at risk from increasing the amount of protein that you're going to take in. Your body can handle it.
So how do we know what an adequate amount of protein is?
So, there's a couple different ways to do it, but if you're really going to get down to it, you can literally measure the amount of grams per your own body weight. And so if you're not getting, and again, this depends on how active you're being during the day, but you want to be in a healthy range of somewhere between 1.2 up to, but not exceeding, 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight every single day. And you can measure that out, right? How much, so there is, 1 kilogram is 2.2 pounds. You can do that conversion, so you know how much you weigh in kilograms. And then you can figure out, what is 1.5 grams of protein per every kilogram of your own body weight. And you can figure out, that's how many grams of protein you need every single day to make sure that you're sustaining the feeling of fullness and you're getting enough energy in your body from proteins.
And it's actually a lot more than you think, because we've met individuals who, when we ask them to kind of, measure out how much protein they're eating, they're doing 50 or 60 grams when they should be doing 75, 80, 90 grams of protein. So just know most people, what we do is we eat a lot of carbohydrates, we eat not enough protein, and we eat extremely low amounts of fat.
Right.
And that's the classic Western diet.
Yeah, and I don't mind putting myself on the spot to use me as an example. I weigh about 66 kilograms, right? So then even if I'm doing 1.5 kilograms, that's about 100 1.5 grams per kilogram, that's about 100 grams of protein that I have to consume every single day just to maintain where I'm at. Nevertheless, if I'm training for a specific athletic event or whatnot, if I'm going to be a weekend warrior, I need more than that.
So they've actually found if you have type 2 diabetes, one of the easiest ways to start increasing your protein intake is simply using a protein shake as your morning meal instead of eating a high carbohydrate breakfast. A lot of people, it's oatmeal and it's toast and, it's I don't know, whatever. I don't eat breakfast, so
pancakes,
toast,
waffles,
French toast. There you go. Thank you for the
cereals,
muffins, scones, etc. So a a good challenge for you would be, hey, listen, start doing a low-grade amount of intermittent fasting. Use a protein shake as your first morning meal of the day. Check your sugars before.
Yeah.
Wait till lunch. You should be seeing things start to come down. And just know that the more protein you consume, the more full you feel, the longer it keeps you in a state of not having cravings for other types of carbohydrates. And here's an interesting fact. When you don't eat enough protein, your body has protein. And what happens sometimes is we start to lose muscle mass.
Right, you'll break down your own muscles.
We'll physically take our muscles in a state known as catabolism, where we'll rip the muscles apart to turn them into individual amino acids because we aren't eating enough. And I hate to say this, but a good 80 to 90% of people we test are protein deficient, and they're in a state of high inflammatory nature because their body is basically eating itself.
Yep, exactly. That's a good point.
Now, the fats are going to be the thing that we have to spend just a little bit of time on because a lot of people are somewhat, vilified by increasing fats. But the unique thing is when you do them in a healthy state. So if we use things like conjugated linoleic acid, which is found in butter, or medium chain triglycerides, which are found in MCT oils, or the lauric acids, which are found in coconut oils. There are certain types of oils which have been shown to be significantly anti-inflammatory, very soothing and healing for your body, and help you to actually produce ketones.
Wait, you just said butter is a good thing for you?
So if it's grass-fed and it's, I'll call it clean, then it's extremely good for you. Grass-fed butter is high in butyric acid, which helps to seal the intestines.
Yeah.
It's high in conjugated linoleic acid, which is a very strong, powerful antioxidant. Whereas, on the other hand, conventional corn-fed butter is high in arachidonic acid and other sort of inflammatory, fats. So it's not so much the amount of fat you eat, it's the kinds of fats that you eat.
Yeah, exactly.
So we focus very heavily on avocado oil, on coconut oil, MCT oils, olive oils, because these are extremely high in anti-inflammatory natures. And then we want to make sure we're eating good, healthy fats from eating avocados and grass-fed beef and, wild-caught fish and, free-range poultry products that are cage-free and been able to go around and eat the foods that they want to eat. If we are supposed to cut down grains to get a good effect in the keto diet, we need to also make sure the animals that we eat do the same.
Exactly. Love that. Yep, I love how you said, because with a lot of the fats and some of the oils, they've had, in research, it shows a really positive effect at reducing the post-meal glucose response. And so over time, that's going to help to lower the A1C. So how do you lower your A1C over time? Again, this isn't a secret, guys. You can do this right now. You can start doing it. Increase the amount of dietary healthy fats that you're consuming on a daily basis. It's going to help you with your meal. So if you are having some carbohydrates with a meal, you want to make sure you have fats too. Find a way to be able to add fats to your diet, to add fats to your meals, because that's going to help with the sugar response. And over time, that will help to lower your A1C all on its own. And you're not changing anything else besides adding some extra fat into what you eat.
Yep. So I want to shift some gears into what we call the power foods for diabetes. We're going to kind of hit these kind of quick just because of time. But did you know that incorporating blueberries into your diet can lower your risk of type 2 diabetes drastically? The anti-diabetic effect is because blueberries are high in something called anthocyanin, which is a chemical that can exert an anti-inflammatory effect into your fat cells and actually help you to increase the utilization of pulling sugar into the cell and burning it for energy.
Exactly. So next thing would be chocolate, but not just any type of chocolate, dark chocolate, especially if you have type 2 diabetes, because studies have shown that eating the dark chocolate will help to lower your blood sugar levels, and it's also going to help promote vasodilation, so that's increasing your arteries, right, the diameter of your arteries, so you can allow more blood flow, which is going to allow more sugar, more glucose to be delivered to working muscle cells and other working cells within your body, and it's going to help to lower the blood sugar overall. Now, disclaimer, there's been some really powerful reports that have come out where you have to be careful with what type of dark chocolate you're eating. So I encourage you to go look that up, find the dark chocolate brands that don't have specific heavy metals, cadmium and aluminum or mercury.
And we have a list of them on the Ask Dr. Ernst website.
You can find them on our website as well, but just disclaimer.
How about this? Both coffee and tea have been shown to significantly improve insulin sensitivity. What we now know is that coffee is the leading source of dietary antioxidants. Did you know that? Like, most people get their primary antioxidants from drinking coffee on a daily basis.
Makes sense with how many people drink it.
Just like the chocolate, we have to be careful. The coffee needs to be clean, free from pesticides, have no mold or yeast inside of it. So you can find more information on the types of coffee we recommend at AskDrErnst.com. But know that it's been shown to decrease oxidative stress and actually increase the microbiome, which helps your gut lining to become sealed, so we lose the sort of autoimmunity attack against the insulin receptor.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thing. Most of you don't realize that your coffee is not being screened for mold. So go find a coffee that guarantees that it's mold free and it's being tested on a regular basis. So please go search that out.
Yeah.
Okay, next, fermented foods. So your ability to regulate your blood sugar, specifically your glycemic control. So your liver's ability to break down sugars and then utilize them for energy in an appropriate way, or store them not as fat but as stored sugar, glycogen, in an appropriate way, whether it's in your muscles or in the liver itself. So I'm talking about things like yogurt, kefir, and kimchi have been shown to help improve that glucose metabolism, specifically your body's ability to regulate that through the liver, right? All toxicity must go through the liver. Sugar is the same way. Sugar can be your friend or sugar can be a toxin. Yeah. The choice is yours, but you can help to regulate that with the fermented foods such as the yogurts, kefirs, and kimchis.
Yep. Nuts and seeds are also on our list simply because they have a tremendous amount of anti-inflammatory effect. Did you know that if you just consume a handful of almonds every day for 24 weeks, it's been found to make you lose weight, reduce your triglycerides, improve your cholesterols, and watch this, drop hemoglobin A1C, and even help with reducing that sort of post-meal blood sugar. Walnuts have been shown to improve endothelial function, which is the vascular lining. So there's a lot of diabetes and heart disease connections. And chia seeds can help to reduce blood sugar, C-reactive protein, and again, watch this, they decrease that post-sugar rise from when you eat foods.
Exactly, and I'm just piggybacking off of that. This was already mentioned, but again, specifically olive oil does a really good job with the post-meal glucose reset, and then over time you'll see that help to lower your A1C.
And we know, of course, that anything that's naturally anti-inflammatory, I think our biggest key is going to be using seafood in the degree of like the natural omega oils. And they've even shown that certain spices can be very helpful. Cinnamon, if you're consuming it around 120 milligrams per day, as high as even up to 6 grams per day, has been shown to reduce fasting blood sugar, reduce cholesterol, help to reduce triglycerides, and it gets rid of this sort of, I'll call it, stress response that happens by having too much sugar within the body. Yep. Garlic does almost the exact same thing, and curcumin is very unique in that it's a global anti-inflammatory. And curcumin's even been shown to somehow act almost the same as what metformin and glucophage and other medications can do.
Without the toxic side effects.
So if you're looking for a great list of foods you can focus on and avenues on how you can solve type 2 diabetes, check out our Diabetes Heal Thyself ebook. This is yours free right now when you text the word diabetes, your name, and your email to 704-906-2094. You can see some of the natural foods that regulate the spices, etc., all found free in the ebook. And we also are hosting that masterclass on Saturday, April 8th. It's at 11 a.m. in the morning. We're going to help you to go so deep into finding your underlying root cause that you'll know exactly what you need to do to solve your type 2 diabetes. That's Again, right. The word diabetes, your name and email to 704-906-2094.
Yep. And so I know we told you at the top of the show that we were going to give you some of the vitamins and minerals that you need too. So we can end the show chatting about that for the last minute or so. I'm going to be real transparent. One of the most important vitamins that we just look over all the time is vitamin D, right? Sun's finally coming out. Get outside to get your vitamin D. You want that from the ultraviolet rays. Let that hit your skin. And then just know that vitamin D is not only going to help but decrease inflammation, but it's going to also allow your body to regulate insulin sensitivity, which is huge, especially if you have type 2 diabetes.
And magnesium is another big one for any type 2 diabetic. Did you know that magnesium is responsible for activating 300 different systems and enzymes within the body? Magnesium can drastically help to lower blood sugar and help to increase insulin sensitivity. And before you just run off and start taking a magnesium supplement, remember, it's in the nuts and seeds we talked about. It's in the avocados, which are healthy fats. It's in the dark chocolate. So if you follow the food list, you'll get a good amount of this natural magnesium.
And lastly, something that's interesting is a compound called berberine, which is a very bitter compound that can be found in some certain things like the Oregon grape and barberry and golden seal plants, but it's going to help improve insulin resistance and insulin secretion, and it's going to help stop the conversion of making new sugars by your liver. So if you're already outputting so much sugar because you've got this insulin sensitivity, you need to stop that process too. And that's something that berberine can help, again, at the liver level.
That's right. Hey, thanks for tuning in today. Don't forget, this is your opportunity now to grab the Diabetes Heal Thyself ebook. Text the word diabetes, your name, and your email to 704-906-2094. And we'll see you on the Diabetes Masterclass, Saturday, April 8th, 10 a.m. in the morning. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next week.
Bye, guys.